Greetings, upstanders. Dr. O here, and I wanted to extend my condolences to the family of Sarah and Yaron, the two Jewish individuals who were killed outside of a museum here in D.C. We have to remember every single day that violence begets violence, and that this idea that people are going to be able to kill their way, shoot their way, stab their way through any type of conflict, it's never going to accomplish anything but getting more violence. And so really at the end of the day, this is not something that should be celebrated in any way, shape, or form. And if we really want to have peace in our own communities, whatever our quote unquote our own communities are loosely defined, whether it's a racial community, a religious community, whatever it is, we can't accept a call for violence and not happen in our communities and then just be casual about it when it happens elsewhere. We just can't do that. My challenge with what happens in this country going forward is that Trump is not the leader who is designed to bring any type of peace in this country. His response to violence is only violence. And the fact of the matter is he has an administration that is engaged in more anti-Semitism in this country in terms of its cabinet and people around him than any president that I've seen in recent memory. Whether you like Bush 2, after 9/11 happened, he actually went to a mosque. When was the last time President Trump met with Muslims in the United States? Not folks overseas promising him jets. When was the last time he met with Muslim people outside of the United States? Like, here in America since the campaign. I can't think of a time where he's met with somebody who's Muslim since the campaign. And why the reason I'm saying this is because it's going to take peace efforts to bring peace in this country. It's going to take efforts to bring communities together. But what Trump has done is that he, in my opinion, and I'm also getting this from Jewish people that I talk to, is that by constantly, and to be clear, what I'm about to say is not justifying any violence towards anybody. I'm making my point as to why Trump is not the person to see us towards any type of unity. Trump is somebody who you never hear mention things like Islamophobia or other forms of racism. He highlights anti-Semitism in a way that makes it look like Jewish people in this country are the only people experiencing any type of form of hate. And that puts a larger target on their back. If Bondi and, the people who bring up, university presidents to these committees to talk about, anti-Semitism on campus and aren't mentioning violence that other groups are experiencing, that puts a target on Jewish people to make it look like they are protected status, they are a protected group, and that this is all the administration cares about. And that breeds more dissension. And the fact of the matter is that people who are out there saying that, these protests out there are the reasons that these killings happen, it's if there were no protests that were happening, people would assume that everything that was happening with Israel and Gaza right now is completely fine. And so to not look at the actions of what's happening in Israel with what's happening in Gaza and not actually take that into consideration, but only look at the protests. The majority of the protests are peaceful. The majority of the protesters do not call for violence. The majority of the protesters do not wish violence on Jewish people in the United States or overseas. That's a fact. And similar to the Black Lives Matter protests, Black Lives Matter protests are usually very peaceful, and then outside forces come in at night, different organizations, throw rocks, hide their hands, and give a sour reputation to what these protesters just did. Sarah and Yaron should be here today. There's no question about that. I heard the story about how he was about to propose to her, just bought a ring, should have an opportunity to do that. And we have to go beyond condemning this hate to actually doing something about it. As somebody who speaks across schools, across the country, I'm wondering, and speaks on finding common ground. I'm wondering, how many middle school and high school assemblies are taking place where people are talking about how to find common ground, how to have what Glenn Singleton calls, a courageous conversation. Who's doing that work? Where is it happening on college campuses? I know that there are some groups that are doing it. I know that there are some universities that have, engaged, like Dartmouth, and making sure that equal voices and different voices are being heard to start to work towards peace. Those are the types of things we need to do in this country to end anti-Semitism, to end Islamophobia, to end all types of hate. People need to be brought together. All this administration is going to do is continually prop everything up as anti-Semitism. And as the head of ICAR said, Jewish Faith Organization in Los Angeles, that I had the profound pleasure of being able to speak to and honor to speak to and work with, she said, Rabbi Brow said, if everything is anti-Semitism, nothing is anti-Semitism. And these are people who fight every day to make sure that the Jewish community is protected. But one of the things that they understand is that one of the ways that you make sure that the Jewish community is protected is by making sure you fight to protect all communities. And, in this country, we've had, Arab American students, 3 of them who were shot at Brown University a few years ago. We had a 6-year-old, Muslim child, a 6-year-old Muslim boy who was stabbed to death over 20 times in Michigan because of hate. And I believe the man who killed him said, kill all Muslims. What is the Trump administration going to do to promote dialogue in this country? What is the Trump administration going to do to acknowledge the hurt that so many people are feeling as it relates to what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank right now? What is going to be done about that? Look, with this guy, and I'm not going to say his name, the man who murdered these 2 individuals, somebody who does something like that, they've already chosen to give up their life. There's nothing that the Trump administration is going to do to stop anti-Semitism by anything that they do to this man. People need interfaith conversations. They need to be brought together. They need to be put in space. I have not heard a single person from the Trump administration talk about we need to end Islamophobia. The most they'll say is we need to stop anti-Semitism and end all forms of hate. But they don't do anything to really stop all forms of hate. Look at what they're doing with the Justice Department, getting rid of all of the civil rights investigations, getting rid of all of the police, the decrees, with communities, getting rid of all of that. While protecting white so-called farmers and refugees, quote unquote, from South Africa. And then they'll say, we want to protect, all refugees who are dealing with anything, but they're actually not doing that. Just like they're actively, consent decrees is what I meant to say earlier. They're actively not working to promote peace in this country. Why isn't the Trump administration bringing Jewish and Muslim leaders, and other groups, religious leaders, Christians, all together to talk about the path forward? Because he doesn't believe in peace. To his core, Trump is a violent man. And he has violent thoughts about how to deal with anything. Oh, people are protesting. Can we shoot him in the knees? This is who he is. And so, to be quite honest, another thing that I'm thinking about is that Trump is actually making it more dangerous for people in this country of all backgrounds, including the Jewish community, because one of the rules that Pam Bondi just, got done was they're making it easier to turn any weapon into a machine gun by allowing for the purchase of certain pieces that can turn any type of gun into a machine gun. You just hold the trigger until the bullets are gone. Imagine if the killer of these 2 Jewish individuals last night had, though, I'm not a gun expert, so, I can't talk to all of the pieces and parts, but imagine if he had that part. He murdered these 2 individuals, and then he went into the museum where other people were after getting rid of his gun. What if he was even more sadistic and had more weaponry because of what Trump and Bondi is allowing? We could have had a bloodbath, because ultimately, to their core, Trump, Bondi, and his administration are violent individuals. They don't want dialogue. And for peace to be possible, we can't sit here and blame anything that happens on a protest or protesters without looking at the real causes of what's going on across the world. But even with the deepest understanding of what's happening in Israel and Gaza and Palestine, even if you feel like Netanyahu is the embodiment of evil. Like, even if you feel all of that, it does not justify murdering these two individuals. Violence begets violence. And so really, this is in our hands, America. Like, what are we going to do in our spaces and places? We can condemn what's happening in Gaza all day, just like I do. And anybody who knows me knows that. But we also have to do the work in fighting for peace, because if one group is going to be targeted, then every group's going to be targeted in some way, shape, or form. And it's ultimately not going to help anyone's cause. And look, the people who I know who are I don't know her, people I know of, like, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the people who I know who are the most fervent for peace and for a two-state solution that I see who are out there have been among the first people to condemn this violence, because they've experienced it and they don't want to see that happen to anybody. And that's real. But the people out there who just don't care, or whatever, it's just 2 Jewish people dead, whatever. If this wasn't happening in Gaza, this wouldn't be happening here. Like, nah, that's not how peace works. That's not how finding common ground works. And if you're going to have that mentality, it's just a matter of time before more violence comes to you. So let's condemn all forms of violence. Let's condemn all forms of hate. Unfortunately, this is not an administration that's going to help bring anybody together. This man has a white nationalist agenda. They are violent in their mindset and to their core. And again, I don't know any administration in recent memory that has had more members from Stephen Miller and other groups say and do more anti-Semitic things, Elon Musk and the like, who's, working to partner with neo-Nazi organizations across the globe. Like, I don't know any presidency in my history that has been more anti-Semitic towards Jewish Americans than this administration, which is why after black women and after black men, the Jewish community was the largest voting bloc for the Democrats against Trump, because they see the signs. And so we're going to have to work and fight towards peace without this administration. And what they're doing on college campuses, doing everything to make, Jewish students a protected group, even though there are many Jewish students on the campuses across the country fighting for peace, fighting for what's happening in Gaza to stop, and fighting to build communities. And if you listen, the Jewish students that I talk to and talk about how targets they feel like on their back, in part because of how this administration is handling things, they're going about it the wrong way. And so we have a lot of work to do, because this administration is not going to be a leader in creating spaces where everybody can be celebrated and not tolerated. They're not going to be a leader in helping this country find common ground in these uncommon times, which is what I speak about regularly. The onus is on us. That's why it's literally spelled ONUS, because it's on us. What are you going to do about it? Peace.